Part 146. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1451. Man Bao, what did you write? Mr. Zhuang and Xiang Mingxiu also raised their heads curiously to look at Xiang Baishan. Baishan said with a serious face, the prince wants to recruit talents for Chongguan Museum. Chongguan Pavilion is the place where the prince studied and where the prince was taught by the master since he was a child. Unlike other princes, the prince was educated by the emperor since he was a child, and the teacher was alone. In the past, the prince's masters were Kong Jiju and Lu Sushi. In the first 18 years, although the prince was mischievous and occasionally rebellious, he preferred horse racing and martial arts compared to Zhaiwen, but overall, Kong Jiju and Lu Sushi were satisfied. After all, he was a prince, and he was not good at writing poetry, but he was proficient in both classics and Confucianism, and he had the will to govern the world. But then the prince's studies failed, and the emperor began to change his teachers in batches. All the ministers in the court and middle class were teachers of the prince, such as Wei Ji, the old Tang, Li Shangshu and others, and even the state uncles Zhao Qiuagong and Yin Li and others have been teachers in Chongguan Hall for several months. However, the emperor's method didn't work. Instead, the ministers became more and more disappointed with the prince. The relationship between the prince and the ministers was also complicated. For example, Wei Ji, he disapproved of the abolition of the prince, but he also felt that the prince was not doing well, so he sent letters to scold the prince every once in a while, almost as often as scolding the emperor. But when someone suggested that the third prince was filial and wise, Wei Ji defended the prince and believed that the orthodoxy should be maintained. Sometimes the prince did too much wrong, and he couldn't help but write a letter to imply that the emperor, or you should consider changing the prince. Of course, after that, he would have to add another book, saying that the previous book was written by him when he lost his mind, so please blame everything. Anyway, in one sentence, the Chongguan Pavilion is where the prince studied and his territory, but now, he is writing to the emperor and blatantly wanting to recruit talents. Baishan took a sip of tea, because he said a lot in the afternoon, and he was still hoarse at the moment. The prince wrote to say that he has many shortcomings, and he didn't listen to the teachings of the teachers before. It's his fault. Anyway, he now knows his fault. He said, I heard that the emperor was very happy when he heard it, and he said on the spot that he wanted Confucius to sacrifice wine and the others to arrange shifts to teach the prince. The prince's book also said that it is boring for him to study alone, and he can't learn, so he wants some people to study with him. Baishan said with a serious face, the prince has even prepared the list, all of them are powerful and powerful people in the court. Son, even Lord Wei's son is on it. He said, originally, His Majesty was quite happy, but when he saw the list, he frowned. Lord Wei was not present at the time, but Li Shangshu's people also objected. Lord Wei entered the palace this afternoon, and His Majesty did not see him. Lord Wei just blocked the gate of Taiji Hall and scolded for an hour before leaving the palace. So in one afternoon, everyone in Qiuazixiu knew all about it. No way, as a reserve for future officials, their news is so well informed. Man Bao opened his mouth wide, and suddenly remembered what the emperor said to her today, standing by the stone jar. She didn't think it was right, so she swallowed and said, the prince is here to thank me at noon today. Baishan asked, thank you for what? Man Bao was speechless for a while, and after a long silence he said, forget it, let's leave the affairs between their big men, it seems that it has nothing to do with us. Seeing her shrinking like a quail, Baishan couldn't help but ask, what bad thing did you do? No, Man Bao flatly denied. Baishan has already said, it can't have anything to do with us, because today there are words from the doctors that Kong Jiju is unwilling to teach the prince, and is planning to retire and return home. Qiuazijian now has few ghosts and snakes, and a large part of the reason is due to the protection of Kong Jiju. Once he leaves, it is uncertain who will hand the Kuazijian to in the future. This is actually related to them. Man Bao hesitated for a moment and then said, "It is very likely that your majesty will agree to the prince's letter." Even Mr. Zhuan couldn't help but ask, "Why?" Man Bao, "Because the lotus flower in the stone jar will definitely live, not only will it live, but it will also grow very well." What Man Bao said was right. After an afternoon and a night of rest, the lotus in the stone jar that she had cut off half of its tubers not only straightened the lotus stem again, but also the two buds were half open, showing them all. So strong, so spirited. The emperor came to see it early in the morning. He stared at the flowers in the stone jar for a while, then turned his head and asked Gu Zhong, who was beside him, "Is this lotus flower not replaced?" Gu Zhong immediately said, "After His Majesty left yesterday, the servants asked people to guard here, and no one has come to touch this lotus." The emperor nodded and asked the gardener who was kneeling beside him, "That tuber can still live after being cut off so much?" The gardener wasn't here yesterday, so he didn't know how much Zhou Man broke off, but it didn't delay his answer. He said, "Your Majesty, there is only a little lotus stem left. As long as it can sprout, it will grow up. But what it will be like and how long it will take to grow well is not certain." The gardener dared not mention it. The emperor was silent for a moment and then said, "It is tenacious." The gardener put his head against the floor tiles and heard the words, "As long as there is water, it can live." The emperor squeezed his fingers and said nothing. Although the prince has occasionally quarreled with people these days, his temper has indeed restrained a lot. It is a good thing that he still has the heart to manage his contacts. The emperor is really not afraid of the prince's management of contacts. What he is afraid of is that he will break the pot and fall, and he is as generous as before. It's not good to be too big. The list presented by the prince almost includes all the noble families in Beijing and the young masters of the right age. After pondering for a while, the emperor turned around and went to the front hall. It was time to go to court. Today's early morning was particularly noisy. The emperor agreed to the prince's request to recruit talents for the Chongqing Museum. Some of the courtiers agreed, but some disagreed, so there was a lot of quarrel. When Man Bao entered the palace, the prince was still arguing with people in front of the palace. She felt the pulse with the prince, saying that the child was healthy, and then learned the piano with the prince, and occasionally ate 2 pieces of snacks. They are here in the wind and the sun, and the prince is in front of the wind and rain. Kong Jiju has been tired from the prince's tossing in the past few years, and he is not willing to run to teach him again, so he wrote a letter to the emperor to resign, and wanted to retire and return to his hometown. As a result, it became even more noisy. Under this commotion, the case of Zhou Man overturning the car, the case of throwing knives from the carriage, and even the case of the prince's poisoning were about to be forgotten. The recruitment of talents in Chongqing Museum is not a small matter, and it is not so simple to decide. Therefore, during the time they quarreled, Yin Li and Tang He took the opportunity to investigate more and more deeply, and brought more and more news and things back to the capital. See you at 4 p.m. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1452. Man Bao doesn't know anything about this. She has recently become popular in the circle of ladies in the capital, and even Zhou Lijun is very happy. It is spring, the season when hundreds of flowers begin to bloom, and among the hundreds of flowers, the most famous is the peony. Man Bao came into the palace with a peony in his arms, which is considered to have opened up his reputation in the capital. Within 2 days, the wife of the Lu family asked Lu Huan to go to Zhou Man's house to choose a complex peony, and then the wife of the Li family sent it. Someone came to choose a Yao Huang. In fact, they want to buy potted flowers more than buying a blossoming flower branch. However, because of the lessons learned, Man Bao did not dare to sell them, and was only willing to sell flower branches. For this reason, Zhou Lejun deliberately handed over the restaurant's money collection to Zhou Lizhong for the time being, and she ran back to take care of Manbao's flower and tree business. I don't know where my aunt found the flower farm. Anyway, she and Bai Shan can always buy good flowers from outside. She is in charge of leading the servants who come to pick flowers and branches. For people who especially want to buy potted flowers, she said, a famous peony like this needs at least 100 taels of flowers outside, and it is only enjoyed once a year. Only a few flowers of a pot of peony can be attached to the head. She said, it's better to buy flower branches. The expensive flower is only 5 taels, and the cheap 2 taels can be bought. How much can the ladies spend changing flowers every day? Not to mention that you have to take care of them when you buy them back. It may not necessarily be able to grow the original color. Seeing what happened to the mutant chrysanthemums that my sister-in-law brought back, she felt that she didn't dare to sell them either. She still had to rely on credibility when doing business. What if she sold potted flowers and they could only keep them for a year? As for those who suggested that the price of flower branches was too high, she said, my aunt raised flowers with care. This pot is all famous, and some varieties have not even been seen. Put a famous hairpin to the banquet hall. Going up and down, with flowers lining people, the girls must be very eye-catching. Is it still expensive for a few taels of silver? She said, you must know that if it is a potted flower, it may not be able to buy hundreds or thousands of taels. Those who can choose flowers on behalf of the owner, they all know the owner's mind very well. The reason why they come to Joe's house to buy flowers and branches is not for the beauty of others. So even if they dislike being expensive, they will buy it. But their words and deeds still reminded Zhou Lejun. She said to Manbao, little aunt, we can't do what we want, we can't sell too many flowers, otherwise the street is full of famous products, and we won't be able to sell the price later. We will do this again next year. Business. If 10 flowers make the same amount of money as selling one, she is of course willing to sell one. So, when someone comes to again, Zhou Lejun doesn't sell everyone, he always has to push back twice, saying that there is no flower today, or the flower you want to buy is not available, it hasn't opened yet, and you have to wait 2 more days. There was no reason why she couldn't find it anyway. Manbao thought that she would offend people like this, and people would not be willing to buy from her again, but it turned out to be even more touted. More people came to the door. Even Mr. Zhuang looked at Zhou Lejun in amazement, and then said to a few apprentices, I didn't expect that there would be a daughter Tao Zhu in our yard. Zhou Lejun, who has little reading, was writing the account book for selling flowers, stroke by stroke. When he heard this, he raised his head and asked curiously, who is Tao Zhu? Bai Erlang said from the side, don't Tao Zhu know? Tao Zhu Gong, Fan Li, a famous person in Chu during the spring and autumn period. It is said that he was very powerful. He became a huge wealth 3 times, and he lost his family wealth 3 times. When Bai Erlang said this, he glanced at Zhou Lejun suspiciously, then turned his head and said to Mr. Zhuang, Sir, are you over-acclaimed? Seeing that he was belittling his niece, Manbao was unhappy, and pushed him and said, you shouldn't say this, it's up to the emperor to say it. Bai Shan, who was on the side, put an article in front of her and said, this is my article, and the doctors in the school have also reviewed it. Manbao looked down and was startled, why did they all approve you? Bai Shan proudly said, I said it all, my article will pass, you look at the seal at the back. Manbao turned to the end and looked at the rows of excellent characters and seals, and was speechless for a long time. It has been 20 days since Bai Shan's article was written. The reason why he is only giving it to Manbao now is because he wants her to be convinced of her defeat, lest she make any excuses not to admit defeat. After his article was written, it was first presented to Mr. Zhuang. Mr. Zhuang was very satisfied after reading it and gave him an excellent award. Bai Shan asked Mr. Zhuang to write the excellent characters at the end of the article. At that time, Mr. Zhuang glanced at him, and he probably knew about the bet he had made with Man Bao, so he wrote it to him, perhaps to increase his credibility. He also stamped a private seal on it. When Bai Shan saw it, he opened the door to a new world. When he took it to the school to show it to the doctor, he also asked him to write down the assessment and then click on a chapter. The doctor, who was not willing to press the chapter, heard that he had made a bet with someone, and when it was a certificate of achievement, he was happy to press the private chapter for him. Not only that, the doctor also diligently helped Bai Shan to find several doctors, and everyone circulated the evaluation together. Finally, the article spread from Qiaoxiu to Taixiu, and then to the 4 schools. I heard that it was also passed to the discipline and arithmetic. After a circle, it fell into the hands of Kong Jiju. Kong Jiju watched it carefully for 2 days, so he also wrote an excellent title on it and pressed a private chapter. So at this moment, Man Bao couldn't find a reason to refute it. After all, this slip of red seal was covered at the back. So she didn't have time to talk to Bai Erlang, and asked in disbelief, why? She took the article and asked Mr. Zhuang, "Sir, haven't you thought about the consequences of abandoning farming?" Mr. Zhuang smiled and said, "Farming is not so easy to be abandoned. Besides, this is an article. I will only read this article." He persuaded us, and we gave him an award. If you are not convinced, you can also write an article refutes him. Standing beside her, Bai Shan turned his head and asked her, "Are you going to write an article to refute me?" Man Bao, how can she be free now? But she was still not convinced, so she nodded fiercely, "Rebut." "Then you can write it," Bai Shan said, "but we are betting on whether I can pass this article. Now the gentlemen have not only passed it to me, but have also given me an award. It is your writing that refuted my article. That's another thing, you have to admit the bet." Zhou Lixiu asked Bai Erlang curiously, "What are you betting on, auntie?" Bai Erlang shook his head, "I don't know, I'm not interested." Bai Shan has already asked Man Bao with a smile, "The day after tomorrow I will take a bath, how about we go the day after?" He said, "After a while, the peach blossoms in the mountains will all bloom." Man Bao nodded, "Okay, then the day after tomorrow." Although she was very unconvinced, she considered herself to be someone who was willing to admit defeat. See you at 8 p.m. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1453. Because she wanted to go to see the peach blossoms with Bai Shan, after Man Bao entered the palace the next day to pierce the prince, she and the prince and concubine asked for a day off, saying, "I'm going to a long trip tomorrow, and I'll come back the day after. Come to the palace." Now the crown princess has some symptoms of pregnancy, but it's okay, it's just drowsiness, sleepiness, and can't smell meat, it's not particularly serious. During this period of time, Man Bao went to the palace every day, and there was nothing around the crown princess. Her fetal image became more and more stable, and Man Bao was taking care of her. Now both mother and child are healthy. Even if Man Bao doesn't go to the palace every other day, it doesn't matter. The crown princess was not as nervous as before, and nodded in agreement. So early the next morning, Bai Shan changed into a new set of clothes, tied up the hair he washed yesterday evening, thought about it, opened the box, took out a jade pendant and hung it on his waist. Everything was ready. He went next door to invite Man Bao. Man Bao also changed his hairstyle, changed into a new suit, and deliberately changed the beads on his head. Man Bao opened the door, and when he saw Bai Shan, he couldn't help but pursed his lips and smiled. Bai Erlang let Zhou Lixiu and others, who were also Humu, to lie on the window of the study and look out, tisk 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 on his face. Bai Shan heard the sound, turned his head to see them, and warned Bai Erlang secretly before reaching out to hold Man Bao's hand, "Let's go, Daji has the car ready, how about we go to the street for breakfast?" Man Bao's eyes lit up and nodded again and again. Bai Shan invited her to eat dumplings. Both of them were growing up and had good appetites. Seeing her looking at the meat patties at the opposite stall, he got up and went over to buy a meat patty. Bai Shan also bought a bag of fried chestnuts with sugar, which he planned to eat when he went up the mountain. The two of them were holding hands and were about to get into the car to go to Suandugwan. More than a dozen riders rushed from behind to surround them. Bai Shan and Man Bao were both startled. Bai Shan pulled Man Bao behind him, and Daji, who had just finished eating the meat pie, immediately stood in front of the two of them. One person rode out, flashed a sign and said, "Dr. Zhou Xiao, Sir Yin wants to see you, please come to Jingzhou Mansion with us." Man Bao breathed a sigh of relief, and quietly said to Bai Shan, "It may be the result of the overturning case." Bai Shan held her hand tightly and said, "I'll go with you." The three of them were guarded by a team of soldiers and horses to go to Jingzhou Mansion. Many people saw them along the way, and they were surrounded by horses just now. "I am afraid that everyone who wants to know now knows." Man Bao and Bai Shan looked at each other, wondering why Yin Li came to invite her with such a big fanfare when he heard Keek say, "I scanned radioactive material, just 958 meters ahead." Man Bao. She immediately turned her head and said this to Bai Shan's ear, and then said, "We have become bait." No, Bai Shan was very depressed, thinking they couldn't choose another day. He said, "It should be the grass that frightens the snake. Now we will see if the snake will be frightened." When they arrived at Jingzhou Mansion, Yin Li was not there, or he was there, but he just didn't come out to see them. It was Master Tang who saw them. Master Tang looked at them with a smile, and it was no surprise that the two of them would come together. Seeing their beautiful clothes and the shoes on their feet, he couldn't help laughing. "Why, we agreed to go out today. Play," he said. "Don't you want to watch peach blossoms in Suandugwan?" Bai Shan pulled Man Bao forward and asked, "Brother Tang, why did you go to great lengths to invite us here?" "I didn't invite you, I invited Man Bao, but since you are here, I can't drive you away," Tang said with a smile. "Come here, I don't think you want to go out to play in the next 2 days. Already?" Bai Shan knew it. Master Tang led them to a room in the side yard, and did not let them in, but led them to look inside from the window. Bai Shan and Man Bao curiously probed in and saw that there were two people sitting tremblingly inside, and one was lying on the bed. Their descriptions are not very good. The sitting look haggard, the eye sockets are sunken, and the hair is sparse, while the lying down, even breathing is weak. Man Bao is a doctor, and her ears are always good. The window is not far from the place where the person is lying. She can hear the breathing of the two, but she can hardly hear the one lying on the bed. She couldn't help turning her head to look at Master Tang. Master Tang did not speak, and motioned them to continue watching. The two people in the room had already spotted them, just looked up and knelt on the ground, shivering. Bai Shan frowned. Keek said in Man Bao's mind, "There is radioactive material on the table." Man Bao immediately looked at the table and saw a box on the table, but the box was covered and she couldn't see the contents. Seeing that Man Bao saw the three people inside, Master Tang took her to the courtyard, a little further away from the house. He said, "That gem was taken from their home. Do you think their disease looks like poisoning?" Man Bao asked Keek in his head, "Are they poisoned?" "If you call radioactive contamination poisoning, it is." Man Bao nodded to Master Tang and affirmed, "Yes." Master Tang sighed, "The situation is very bad. According to the people who went to investigate, the entire village has been affected. Among the children born in the past 2 years, one has an extra hand, and the other has strange facial features. Did not survive for 10 days, and there was a baby girl who was drowned at birth because her right foot had a sarcoma and no 5 fingers at all. Man Bao opened his mouth in surprise. Bai Shan was also frightened, so serious. Master Tang nodded solemnly, they don't know the reason, they thought it was punishment from heaven. Many people moved out of the village, but more people couldn't move, so they sacrificed living people. Both Man Bao and Bai Shan held their breath, feeling a little uncomfortable. Master Tang was not feeling well either. He paused and said, that stone is so poisonous. How could it affect the entire village? Man Bao nodded. According to the information she had read, the situation would only get worse. She said, even if it is buried underground, it will pollute the land and spread out slowly. Get rid of its poison. Those poisons flow along the water and soil, and the vegetables and grains planted may be contaminated, Man Bao said. If it is exposed, and it is often played and watched by people, the poison will be stronger. She paused and said, this thing shouldn't belong to our world. Master Tang nodded, yes, I asked, this is the stone from the sky. Master Tang took them back to the office, took a stack of documents from the desk and gave them to them, saying, in the 9th year of Dajhan, a heaven stone fell from Jiao, and it was occupied by a noble of Jiao. He sent slaves to smash it down. He took out a gem from the Tiankang, sent a craftsman to carve it day and night, and finally cut and carved the rooster-shaped gem. See you at 10 p.m. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1454. In addition to the rooster gems that have been carved, they also polished other small accessories, and left a large piece that could not shine. The craftsman's head hid some stones and tried to transport the peeled shell home. In addition to him, other craftsmen also secretly hid some intercepted luminous stone beads. The status of artisans was very low, especially in Jiao, where artisans were controlled by nobles. In their spare time, they farm in the village, and when necessary, they are directly recruited. They need a lot of money to break away from the craftsmanship. So they hid things and didn't dare to sell them for a while, so they hid them quietly. Master Tang said, that rooster gem was given to the Jiao royal family by that powerful person. Until the 14th year of Dajhan, when King Jiao formed an alliance with the Turks, His Majesty sent Hoji, Shuiwan, and others to conquer Jiao, and the kingdom of Jiao was destroyed. The gem was hidden by Hoji. Isn't the 14th year of Dajhan just 2 years ago? Bai Shan asked, so Hoji doesn't know there's something wrong with this stone. Master Tang raised his mouth slightly and said meaningfully, the Prince Jiao, who once owned this gem, knew that there was something wrong with this gem. In the 14th year of Dajhan, his back house gave birth to 2 problematic children. Not to mention, the eldest son still had a nosebleed and died of weakness. He invited a lot of doctors to come to the door, and finally the people from the Buddhist temple told him that there was a problem with the stone. Before the Jiao kingdom was destroyed, he had already sent people to find the villages of the craftsmen, but before he could do anything, Jiao was destroyed. Those close to him who had served him also died, but one person was left out of those who had been to that village. He said that the eldest prince once wanted to offer His Majesty gems to conspire against the royal family of our dynasty, but Haoji was greedy and embezzled most of the property confiscated from the Jiao royal family. Master Tang raised his head to look at the 2 of them. Unfortunately, there are ministers around the Prince Jiao who are unwilling to be slaves, so he told Hoji the secret of the gem, in the hope of getting preferential treatment. Bai Shan asked, what about those people? All dead, said Master Tang, I didn't return to the capital, and died of illness on the way. Those were captives, not members of the Jiao royal family. They died when they died. Hoji had just made a great contribution, and the emperor and courtiers would not trouble Hoji for several ministers of the enemy country. Bai Shan thought of something, I heard that the prince and Hoji are not on good terms. Lord Tang nodded. Hoji greedily hid most of his property after conquest of Jiao, and then killed the prisoners. His Highness did not like it very much, and he took the lead in impeaching him. He said, he was born and died with His Majesty. In the 3rd year of Dajhan, he was named Duke of Yu, but in the 6th year of Dajhan, he indulged his slaves to occupy land in the Shangzhou circle. Unfortunately, when the prince was ordered to inspect Kyushu, he happened to arrive in Shangzhou State. The prince's temper was not very good at first. At that time, the slave of the Ho family was rude, so he directly cut him off. Of course, he not only cut down other people's slaves, but also cut down Hoji's own younger brother. It was Hoji's younger brother who instructed the slaves to enclose the land back then. Of course, it was also possible that it was Hoji. It's a pity that the prince cut too fast and didn't have time to ask for the confession. However, Master Tang felt that even if he asked about it, with Hoji's exploits, he would probably end up with a painless reprimand. There are not many such things in the court. His Majesty has always treated the hero very favorably. And the prince cut off Hoji's younger brother, and the matter became a big one. At that time, the prince just got married, and it was a time of great beauty. At that time, no one knew that he was infertile. The relationship between the brothers was good, and no one robbed him, so he had not lost his mind. Although he was annoyed and cut people off, he immediately entered the palace as soon as he returned to the capital. Apologizing to Hoji in front of the emperor and his ministers, expressing apologetically that he saw someone driving away the good people with slaves and occupying the land. Kong Jiju and Zhang Sushi were of course unhappy when they saw the apology from the prince and Hoji they had taught. They felt that the prince did the right thing and that there was a degree of progress and retreat. Although the procedure was a bit illegal, these flaws could be ignored. And the poor officials headed by Wei Ji were even more disgusted by the behavior of Sungi's circle occupying land, so they also turned a blind eye to the illegal methods of the prince and attacked Haoji directly. Even the emperor had to retreat in front of Wei Ji's mouth, let alone Hoji. His own younger brother died, and he was very annoyed at first. When he was attacked by Wei Ji and others, he immediately lost his mind and fought with Wei Ji in front of the emperor. At that time, there was a very famous gang fight incident, which is still mentioned by some senior officials from time to time today. For example, Mr. Tang's father, Mr. Tang, was very heroic and gave the opponent a kick when Ho Jikong came up, saving Mr. Wei who was standing beside him. Of course, he was also hit on the left side of the face in the end, and his face was bruised for a long time. Even Master Tang remembered it deeply. Your Majesty is angry that Hoji is making a scene in court and cannot restrain his family, so he is downgraded to Zhou. Master Tang recounted the grievances of the year, and took a sip of tea to moisten his throat and said, after that, Hoji sent to Liangzhou to guard. He was the first in Dajhan's 14th year to conquer Jiao. He should have been promoted to duke, but... Master Tang coughed lightly. As a result, the prince could not see him killing the captives, and some people informed him that he was hiding his belongings, so His Royal Highness sent a letter to investigate thoroughly. His Majesty didn't want to investigate at that time. After all, they have only made a great contribution. As soon as the front foot has just pulled the prisoner back, the back foot has to check the others. No matter whether they know it or not, after I hear it, I will definitely think that he will not be able to tolerate the hero. The emperor didn't want to let the heroes feel cold, and all the nobles of the half dynasty at that time expressed their opposition, and they felt that their lips were dead and their teeth were cold, and the emperor did not want to investigate. Master Tang said, but the prince entered the palace overnight, and I don't know what he said to His Majesty. The next day His Majesty ordered someone to investigate. However, he did a hasty investigation and found nothing, but Hoji did not. Being promoted is only rewarded with a lot of things and praised several times. But for Hoji, not being promoted is punishment. Now that the world is getting more peaceful, and there are fewer and fewer wars, as military generals, it is more and more difficult for them to make achievements. Master Tang said. After that, Hoji often complained and resented the prince, so it's no secret that they were not in harmony. Judging from the information we have found now, the thing is that one of Hoji's disciples gave it to a Hu merchant, and the Hu merchant gave it to him. A secretary of the East Palace, and then the secretary will present it to His Royal Highness. Hushang and the secretary of the East Palace have taken it, and they don't know the inside story. He said, I think Hoji should not have much power in the palace, so the crown prince gave you the gem, and then sent a letter to the study, and he would not knowing that the gem has been sent, he didn't send someone to rob him until Lord Yin released the news. Bai Shan was a little puzzled. Master Tang, why did you tell us this? Prince, I am your nemesis. See you tomorrow. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1455. Master Tang smiled and said, because I may need Man Bao to go to the palace, maybe I need to add another Yu now. Master Tang only brought the craftsman's family this time, because the craftsman died long ago. In addition to the people, I also brought back those stones, because I knew that it was poisonous, and I saw the effect, let alone Master Tang, even Yin Li deliberately stayed away, and specially arranged people here in the side courtyard. Master Tang said, Master Yin has entered the palace, and it may not be long before you will be summoned in the palace. You discovered this poison and you cured it? Your Majesty may want to ask questions at that time. The most important thing is that they released the news as soon as the person was sent to the capital. They didn't hide it, and they sent someone to pick up Zhou Man with great fanfare. They should have been shocked by now. People will do wrong things when they panic, especially when Hoji doesn't seem to be very smart, so Master Tang feels that it is safer to keep Zhou Man under his nose. Man Bao still didn't react a bit at the moment. After all, he just heard such a wonderful grievance and hatred. Bai Shan had already asked, what did His Royal Highness say? Master Tang, His Royal Highness didn't expect it, so after finding Hoji, he couldn't go any further, and he kept secretly sending people to watch Hoji. The prince never thought that this was Hoji's personal grievance, and thought that Hoji had defected to the third child at some point and harmed him together with the third prince. In his opinion, he didn't like Hoji, even called it disgust, but the two things he did were right things and wrong people. If he didn't do something, could he bump into him? After the incident, he basically forgot about it, mainly because Hoji hadn't moved in front of him in recent years. Speaking of hatred, he probably hated Wei Ji, who scolds him every once in a while, and he didn't do anything to Wei Ji. So he felt that Hoji's brain was a little bad. At this moment, he was sitting under the emperor and listening to Yin Li report all the things he found out. At present, all the evidence points to Hoji, and it is indicated that this is a personal grudge, so the prince is very angry. Just because Gu doesn't like him, will he risk the crime of killing Gu? Yin Li said, Your Majesty, he was also the one who threw the knife into Zhou Man's carriage. The emperor frowned. What about the person who made Zhou Man roll over? Yin Li said, it's not him. The emperor narrowed his eyes, suddenly turned his head and said to the prince, you take someone to Ho's house in person, and invite Hoji into the palace. I want to personally interrogate him. The prince's eyes moved left and right on the emperor and Yin Li suspiciously. If it was usual, he would definitely get angry and say that the emperor was going to cover up the third prince. But at the moment he didn't say anything, just got up and left with a sullen face. Seeing that he was gone, Gu Zhong also bowed and retreated, leaving only the emperor and Yin Li in the study. The emperor asked Yin Li to sit and say. Yin Li said that he was more comfortable standing. After all, the next conversation might make the emperor not so happy. Yin Li lowered his head and said, I have been sending people to stare at Ho's mansion, and when I checked ahead, I found that he had sent people to Luo's Hu. The emperor's face sank and asked, why did he send someone to Luozu? The person who sent it didn't catch it, but he sent a group of people out 2 days ago, and the minister has already sent someone to follow him. There should be news coming back soon. The emperor's mouth pursed tightly, and after a moment of silence he asked, do you suspect that this has something to do with Prince Gong? The matter of sending gems to the crown prince should have nothing to do with Prince Gong, but at this time, whether Prince Gong knows, and this minister does not know. Yin Li is very cautious. He will not directly make a conclusion if there is no evidence. He said, King Gong is more familiar with the palace. If he is the mastermind of this matter, it should not be so easy for people to find out. At that time, even if they are suspicious, it will be difficult for them to grasp the evidence. Last time, the matter of the concubine Liu's concubine in the East Palace could not be confirmed by Feng Shangshu, and it could only be deduced by some clues. All the people who handled it all the way died. If it wasn't for the secret spies that the emperor raised, they wouldn't even know that the king of Yaz who provoked King Gong to do it. But this time, although Hoji also killed people, they grabbed the thread and pulled out all the people involved. Obviously, his tail was not clean, and because he was not familiar with the palace, so there are a lot of tricks exposed. The emperor was silent for a while and then asked, what about the crown prince's drunkenness case? But Prince Gong said that he didn't do it. Yin Li was silent for a while and then said, Your Majesty may be able to ask King Guangping. Emperor. King Guangping was his fourth son, the fief of Xiangzhou, and he went to the vassal when he became an adult. Yin Li paused for a while and said, I checked it out. A buying waiter who was in contact with the wine waiter a few years ago bought a house on the outskirts of Beijing. The emperor said blankly, I know, Gu Zhong said that he is from Prince Gong. Yes, he has always been close to King Gong, and he was able to get the job because of the eunuch chief by King Gong's side, but the minister asked people to check the house and found that he was a deist from Jianese. About 5 years ago, his nephew lived in exile. In the capital, Yan said family members were killed in the floods and escapes. Yin Li and Tang He investigated very carefully, except for the criminal suspects such as Hoji, King Guangping, and King Gong, they were all arrested. It was also very noisy recently in the courtroom, and they were quiet again, otherwise the trouble would have come out earlier. Yin Li said, his nephew was favored by a squire named Qian on the way to Beijing. Because the servant was in the palace, the Qian family even paid for him to buy him a house, and his nephew was raised in the house. Among them. Unfortunately, the Qian family's daughter-in-law has a sister who is a wet nurse in the Guangping Palace. After turning such a big turn, if Yin Li was not in charge of Jingzhou Mansion, and Tang He was patient enough, I'm afraid no one would be able to find out. Gu Zhong had also suspected the Qian family before, but there was nothing unusual in the reaction of the Qian family. Where did he notice that there was something wrong with the Qian family's daughter-in-law, who had been keeping her head down and pretending to be timid? This incident opened a hole, and the other matter was easy to investigate. Yin Li said, the one who made Zhou Man overturn the car in the downtown area and threw his heart and kidneys into it to scare her was also a disciple of King Guangping, but the person he used was still the same. I have something to do with King Gong. Therefore, why does King Guangping do this is very fragrant. If the crown prince had been childless, Prince Gong would definitely not give up the fight for the throne, the brothers would only get more and more violent, and no one knew what would happen in the end. But if the prince is abolished, the emperor and courtiers will largely not stand up to the king. Prince Gong is a fan of the authorities, but bystanders, such as Yin Li and Wei Ji, will try their best to oppose it. Not because of how much they liked the prince, but because they disapproved of and liked Prince Gong. And once Prince Gong ascended the throne, the crown prince would surely die, and the emperor should be hesitant in his heart. As long as he hesitates, he has a great chance if he does not have to have an heir. Because the second prince's aptitude is not very good, and he has no intention of competing for the throne, but he is different, his age and intelligence are suitable, and the success of the fourth prince is still great. The premise is not to be found out. See you at 4 p.m. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1456. In fact, King Guangping is even more difficult to find than Haoji. This time they can find King Guangping, thanks to Haoji. Yin Li said, Haoji not only sent people to Luozhu, but also sent people to Xiangzhou. So they stared at Haoji, and then they noticed that King Guangping, who had been keeping a low profile, Tang He personally went to investigate, and this investigation was incredible. Yin Li didn't know if King Guangping would hate Haoji after he found out. Anyway, he was very grateful to the other party at this moment, otherwise he didn't know when the case would be investigated. You know, they have been investigating for 48 days since His Majesty handed over this case to them. The emperor bowed his head and turned over the confession presented by Yin Li, and suddenly became angry. Bring up the witnesses and evidence. After a pause, he said, Xianfeng Shangshu and Tang Qing enter the palace. This matter is not trivial, and he has to give an account to the courtiers. Haoji deserves a lot of credit. Yin Li responded and said, Your Majesty, those stones are poisonous. Xian, come in, the emperor said with a blank expression, it's just a while, it can't be poisoned. Yin Li complied, and then bowed and retreated. He returned to Jingzhou mansion and asked his subordinates, how about the iron box you made? Just welded. Yin Li nodded, put the stones on and carry the three people into the palace. Master Tang was sitting in the office drinking tea and chatting with Man Bao and the others. Hearing the movement outside, he came out to see it together. Yin Li saw them as soon as he looked up. Master Tang hurriedly brought the two of them forward to salute, and asked with a smile, Master, are the snakes startled? Yin Li glanced at Bai Shan and Zhou Man and said, the crown prince brought the imperial guards over. The snake could not help but startled, he was about to run away. Since the mystery of the stone was discovered by the prince and others, he has been restless, so he has restrained a lot, and dare not stare at the prince and Jingzhou mansion blatantly. But just staring quietly, he also knows that many people have been taken, and those people are more or less related to him. Therefore, he was always a little worried, and his godsons even persuaded him to leave Beijing and return to Liangzhou. Your Majesty Shaon, Daddy followed him from birth to death, and even saved him on the battlefield, but because of Huang Kaoxia or slanderous words waiting for Daddy, why didn't Daddy go against him? His Li family's world is reversed. Daddy's martial arts are not weaker than him, so he can. To be honest, Haoji was a little moved, but he didn't dare. Today is different from the past. Back then, it was because of the tyranny of the previous emperor that the people of the world were uneasy, and there were continuous uprisings in various places. Now, not to mention Hin Hecking, at least the people are living and working in peace and contentment. Who has nothing to rebel against him? He is not cowardly when it comes to fighting, but there are many capable people under His Majesty. While hesitating, someone came to report early this morning that Jingzhou Mansion had brought back a few people from Jiaokang, who seemed to be descendants of those craftsmen, and even some of them were close to Prince Jiaokang. Haoji panicked, and he hurriedly asked his godsons, are there any echoes from the third and fourth princes? No, when the fourth prince saw our people, there was a hint of an alliance, but as soon as the prince's poisoning case came out, our people were expelled from Xiangzhou. He added, where the third prince was, our people were detained. Down. I'm asking about the person sent out for the second time. Dad, that person probably just arrived in Luozhu now. Dad, let's run first, out of the capital, the sky is high and the birds fly, where can we go? Yeah, Let's keep the green hills without worrying about no firewood. Dad, we can go to Liangzhou. If we can't do it, we can go to the western regions, or we can go to Tibet. That's right, with Daddy's talent, Tubo will definitely welcome him. Hoji struggled fiercely in his heart, finally gritted his teeth, stomped his feet, stood up and said, "Let's go." So Hoji took a bunch of godsons and said that he was going to hunt in Beijing, and before leaving, he called his younger son. Under Yin Li's order, the person who was staring at Hoji outside was stunned for a moment, and then quickly called someone back to warn him, and he quickly followed. Yin Li, who thought it was foolproof, had someone carry someone to enter the palace, but someone rushed to report, "Sir, Hoji took his godsons to the outside of the capital, and went down to the world to make a noise, saying that he was going to hunt." Yin Li's face sank. Spring hunting. After a winter, the animals in the wild are not only hungry and thin, but also very irritable because of hunger. Not only are they hard to fight, but they are also very fierce. Who is stupid to go hunting in spring? And spring hunting ban? Yin Li asked, "Did you see the crown prince and the imperial guard on the road?" "I didn't see it, I came back all the way from Ho's mansion." Yin Li frowned, and another person rushed to report, "Sir, Hoji and the others left the inner city a quarter of an hour ago and went to the west gate." Master Tang couldn't help but step forward, "Master." Yin Li has already said decisively, "Go to the 3 camps to transfer people, and immediately go out of the city to capture Hoji. If there is resistance, it will be punished as a rebellion." Yin Li turned his head and said to Tang He, "Master Xiao Tang, you can bring these people and things into the palace." Some of his subordinates had brought his armor and weapons, and he took them one by one, putting on the armor as he walked, and his own subordinates brought his horse. Man Bao and Bai Shan stood by and watched many people running back and forth, but they were still orderly. When Yin Li arrived in front of the horse, several guards immediately helped him put on his armor and waited for him to mount and leave. Yin Li led the people away quickly, not to mention Bai Shan. Even Man Bao could see stars in his eyes. "It's really amazing." Master Tang nodded in agreement. At this moment, Man Bao and Bai Shan finally felt sorry for them. If Yin Or is also healthy, will he also become a famous general in the future? Master Tang said with a smile, "This is considered powerful? You have never seen Duke Wei before." He said with some yearning, "The Duke of Wei is the first among the generals. By the way, Hoji's art of war is learned from the Duke of Wei." Bai Shan was curious, "Are they master and apprentice? I haven't heard anyone in Qiaoxiu say that the two have an intersection." Master Tang also came from Qiaoxiu, and he knew the situation in Qiaoxiu. A group of students liked to talk about the affairs of the ministers in the DPRK and the various families. There are more gossips than restaurants and tea houses. He smiled and said, "Their relationship is not very good." It was His Majesty who asked Hoji to study with Duke Wei. Hoji once told Duke Wei that he wanted to rebel, because Duke Wei was not attentive when he taught and did not teach the art of war. They were taught to him, but Duke Wei also said that Hoji wanted to rebel, because the Central Plains was stable, and the art of war he taught was enough for him to control the 4 barbarians, but he was still not satisfied, and it was obvious that he had rebellion. Master Tang said, "But your Majesty doesn't believe it." Bai Shan's face was full of doubts. "Is it so simple to sue someone for treason? Can you say anything casually?" Master Tang said meaningfully, "It's just the old ministers beside His Majesty. If I waited, I would have to have evidence. These people followed the emperor to make meritorious deeds, from birth to death, crawling and rolling in the army together. In his father's words, His Majesty slept with them, ate together, urinated and pooped together, and you blocked the knife for me. I have cut arrows for you, and the affection is incomparable to these people. So they can speak casually, but they can't keep their mouths shut. See you at 8 p.m. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1457. Master Tang is not worried about Master Yin who is chasing him. He doesn't think Hoji can escape. This is in the capital, far away from Liangzhou. They want to run away just because they are so small. What are they thinking? So he asked people to carry the patient in the room, and then brought the other two people with stone, and then let Zhou Man and Bai Shan into the palace together. When they arrived at the Taiji palace, Feng Shangshu and others had already entered the palace by edict. Seeing the people lying on the wooden boards, Feng Shangshu and the others were startled. The emperor got up and walked down, staring at the person for a while, and beckoned to Xiao Yuanzhang, who was waiting beside him, to show him. Xiao Yuan was checking his pulse, frowned after thinking for a long time, and said, "Your Majesty, this person's 5 internal organs are weak and easily invaded by external evils. Other than that, I can't see any problems." Can't see the problem, or can't see the problem, but don't know what the problem is. Xiao Yuan said righteously, "There is a problem, but the minister has little talent and knowledge, so I don't know what the problem is." Emperor, but poisoning. Xiao Yuanzhang was taken aback, and quickly said, "This minister is so ignorant, I really can't tell." The emperor looked at Man Bao, and Zhou Man hesitated for a while before saying, "It's not an endogenous disease, but caused by an external evil, so I think he is poisoned." The emperor looked down at the man on the wooden board and said nothing. If Zhou Man doesn't find out in advance, will the prince become like this in the future? Just thinking about it, the emperor became annoyed, turned around and sat behind the table, and threw the confession presented by Yin Li and the things he found to Feng Shangshu and others to see. Feng Shangshu and the others had just entered the palace and had no idea what was going on. When they saw the file, they all opened their mouths. At this time, the prince led the imperial guards to catch up with Hoji and others in the western suburbs. When Hoji saw the prince and the imperial guards, he immediately hit the whip fiercely and ran like crazy. The prince and the others fell behind and ate a mouthful of dirt, so they could only force their mouths tightly, closing their eyes slightly and quickly chasing after them. But there are also the imperial guards who are not afraid of the dust flying in the face, and they shout directly, "Marquis Zhou, your Majesty has ordered you, do you want to rebel if you don't obey the order?" Hoji ran away. The prince was so angry that he simply took a bow and drew an arrow and shot it. The prince was annoyed when an arrow shot from behind him and hit a person directly. The person fell from the horse, and the two horses behind him immediately became confused. While driving the horse to catch up, the prince looked back and saw that Yin Li did not know when he had brought troops and horses to chase. The prince was relieved, turned his head to look at Hoji, who was running in front of him, and sneered. By the time the battle in the western suburbs was over and someone was sent back to notify, it was already past noon. They seem to have run far away, and the speed of returning with them is slower. The emperor looked at the hourglass and saw that Feng Shangshu and the others had also read the case, so he simply asked people to have lunch, and then they had lunch first. When Yin Li and the crown prince escort the people back, they probably won't have time for lunch. Feng Shangshu and the others also often had meals with the emperor, but they were used to it, so they carefully sat on the chairs after saluting. Master Tang has been quiet since he entered the Taiji palace. Unless the emperor called him by name, he would never speak. Bai Shan was even more so, he didn't speak any more except to salute and say a word when he came in. The three of them, the youngest, sat silently at the back. The emperor was not in a good mood. After the meal came, he frowned and plucked the dishes. He didn't have much appetite, so he looked up at the people sitting on both sides. At a glance, I saw 3 people sitting at the end eating with great gusto. The emperor looked at the 3 of them carefully, only to realize that Bai Shan and Zhou Man seemed to be dressed very brightly today, so he asked, "Did you dress up specially when you entered the palace?" Man Bao paused for a moment and looked at Bai Shan. Bai Shan was silent for a moment, then bowed and replied, entering the palace to face the saint, "Don't dare to lose your manners." Zhou Man went to the palace every day, and he had to see the queen every once in a while. He looked at the two suspiciously. Under the eyes of the emperor, Master Tang couldn't swallow, so he put down his chopsticks and bowed and added, "Your Majesty," they were suddenly invited by the minister. At that time, the two of them were planning to go to Suandu Guanli to see the peach blossoms. The emperor sighed and said, "The spring is just right now, and the peach blossoms in Suandu temple are indeed worth seeing." He glanced at Bai Shan and Zhou Man and asked, "You guys are engaged, right?" The two bowed together and said yes. The emperor nodded, and without saying anything, nodded with chopsticks and said, "Let's have dinner." The sadness that suddenly surged up from the emperor only lasted for a while. After Yin Li and the crown prince took Hoji back to the palace, his sadness dissipated and only his anger remained. Hoji ran all the way, and in the end most of the godsons who were with him died. He was also beaten by Yin Li, and then he was escorted into the palace. The emperor personally interrogated Hoji, Yin Li, and others, including the prince, all retreated outside. The emperor's roar and Hoji's cry could be heard from time to time in the Taiji hall. Hoji cried and lay on the ground, trembling all over, "Your Majesty, this minister is guilty, and the minister is fascinated by ghosts, and he didn't know what he was doing at first." The emperor was so angry that he knocked over the iron box on the table, and the stone inside rolled down to Hoji's side. He took 2 steps forward, kicked him directly on the shoulder, and kicked him out. "You don't know. What are you thinking? Then how can you plan carefully and deliver this thing to the prince step by step?" Hoji got up from the ground and knelt again, and kowtowed again and again, "The minister has lost his mind, the minister has lost his mind, Your Majesty forgives your sins, Your Majesty forgives your sins." The emperor's face was solemn, and he asked, "What are you sending people to Luozhou and Xiangzhou for?" Hoji's face turned pale, his body trembled even more, and he couldn't speak at all. The emperor understood at a glance, closed his eyes and said, "Come on, take him down." "Your Majesty, the one who detained the minister did not promise to form an alliance with the minister. He seemed to have anticipated his fate and wanted to do something in the end." Before the guards escorted him down, he hurriedly shouted, "King Gong doesn't know about this, and neither does the wife and children of this minister. I beg your Majesty to let them go." Hoji was detained. The prince also heard his cry, his face was cold but he didn't say a word. He believed it or not, only he knew in his heart. Man Bao followed them in. The emperor had calmed down his anger, turned his head and asked Zhou Man, "Can you detox them?" When Man Bao was in Jingzhou mansion, he asked Keek to scan the 3 people and paid a good amount of points. She glanced at the scattered stones on the ground, thought for a moment, and said, "It's impossible to cure them completely. Their bones and blood have been affected. It's best not to have children in the future. After detoxification, they can survive like ordinary people." Then his eyes fell on the man lying on the wooden board, and he whispered, "He can't be cured." The emperor also saw it, the man on the ground could barely hear his breathing. See you at 10 p.m. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1458. The case has been clarified, and Man Bao doesn't care much about the follow-up development, because no matter which case it is, she is the one incidentally. The prince was the main victim. She believed that due to the prince's temper, these cases would definitely get a fair trial. That's why she didn't want to go to the emperor to punish him. This is what Bai Shan meant. It's better to let the prince who has the confidence and the backing do it. What Man Bao cares most about is. She looked at the scattered stones on the ground, which was what she cared about. Man Bao swallowed, and seeing that everyone was consciously avoiding the stones on the ground, she stepped forward and said, "Your Majesty, why don't you leave these poisonous stones to me? The emperor then looked down at the stone on the ground. After a while, he looked up at Man Bao thoughtfully. What do you want to do? I can get rid of their toxicity, otherwise this thing will be poisonous if it is scattered outside. Man Bao listed to him, vegetables and grains absorb nutrients and water from the soil, which may be mixed with the poison that it seeps in. Even if you don't plant things on the polluted land, there will be wild livestock grazing, and if people eat livestock again, even if the toxicity is less, it will still exist. The emperor did not expect the stone to be so poisonous. Where is this precious stone? It is completely a poisonous stone. Feng Shangshu and the others couldn't help but quietly backed away, further away from the stones on the ground. The emperor couldn't help but wonder, did this stone fall from the sky? Master Tang responded, yes. Meteorites falling from the sky are often recorded in history books, but this is the first time I have heard of such a poisonous stone. Emperor. He couldn't help but be concerned, is the previous stone from the sky so poisonous? This Feng Shangshu can answer him, I have never heard of it before. Master Tang added, this stone is also very different. Not only is it bright in color, it is as warm as jade, but it even glows. The ministers and others have searched the history books and have never seen any similar records. So this stone is the first since the world was created. After hesitating for a moment, the emperor nodded, agreeing to Zhou Man's proposal to take the stone away for disposal. However, in order to prevent these stones from harming people again, he said to Darren Tang, after Zhou Man has dealt with it, you can take it back as it is and send people to an open place to be buried. This is not to worry about. Master Tang should go down. Man Bao became happy, rolled up his sleeves and picked up the scattered stones on the ground into the iron box, and Bai Shan helped her pick them up together. One of them is a peeled shell. Its color is very dull, and it only emits a faint dull light. It is said that when the stone was dug out of the pit, there was a crack on it. Color and soft glow. Only then did I find a way to peel off the outer shell, revealing a brighter layer of color inside. But Keek said, among the stones present, the most radioactive is this large shell in your hand. Man Bao almost smashed the stone out of her hand, but she still put it back into the iron box steadily. Because of the poisonous stone around, everyone was very uncomfortable, even the emperor subconsciously stayed away from the iron box. Man Bao said directly, Your Majesty, I will go back with my things first. The emperor immediately breathed a sigh of relief and waved his hand, Go, go, let Tang's Hai go with you. A guard came in to help lift the iron box down. Yes, this iron box is big and heavy. Master Tang glanced at Yin Li and the others, and knew that the next thing was out of his control, so he followed Man Bao and Bai Shan to retreat. When the iron box was placed on the carriage, Man Bao asked Master Tang, would you like to draw a portrait of them one by one? Master Tang glanced at her and said, no, I have written down what they looked like. Man Bao nodded, opened his eyes and said nonsense, don't worry, I already have experience in detoxifying the stone. It doesn't take 7 or 49 days, and it only takes 7 days to detoxify the poison. Master Tang nodded, okay, I'll come and watch when I have time. Bai Shan and Man Bao went home with the iron box. Daji helped them move their things into Man Bao's room, and then took a note written by Man Bao and returned it. Bai Shan helped her close the door and window, and then watched Man Bao take everything out of the iron box, and then everything disappeared in front of her eyes the same. Bai Shan bowed respectfully to the void in front of him, and then asked Man Bao, what does Uncle Joe do with these things? Change the antidote. Bai Shan was surprised, is this how the prince's antidote came from? Man Bao nodded, otherwise, what do you think? She said, I can't solve this poison of falling stones from the sky. Then what if Master Tang wants a stone? Don't worry, there will be the exact same ones, Man Bao said. The crown prince's gem, except that it doesn't shine, everything else is exactly the same. Bai Shan couldn't help sighing, Goisian is really powerful. Man Bao urged again, don't be superstitious. Even if Bai Shan has heard it, Uncle Joe is right in front of him. How could he be superstitious? Daji went to Ji Shitang with a note full of treasures, and got a small packet of eliminated medicinal materials from Ji Shitang. Shopkeeper Lao Zhang seemed to have heard something from Sanya. Although he didn't quite understand why Zhou Man used these waste herbs to make stones, he didn't delay him finding waste herbs for her. So he took the ladder and talked to the shopkeeper of the next door Baohe Medical Center. Have you returned the medical books your family borrowed from Dr. Zhou Xiao last time? The shopkeeper of the Baohe Medical Center said, it has been paid, and we still have a copy. He said, we didn't take it for nothing, we also exchanged medical books, and we exchanged it on both sides. But, shameless, there are quite a few rare prescriptions in Dr. Zhou's medical book. It's not too embarrassing to exchange the medical book from your family. Do you understand that this is called communication? The shopkeeper of Baohe Medical Center said. Dr. Zhou Xiao didn't say anything. You are an outsider trying to fight me. I'm too lazy to fight you. I'm just telling you that Dr. Zhou Xiao has recently been interested in the waste medicinal materials that have become moldy and damp and expired. However, RG Shitang manages them properly, and there are few waste medicinal materials. Do you have them there? The shopkeeper of Baohe Medical Center rolled his eyes at him. The two are next door. I don't know which one is. Some time ago, he heard him scolding the staff in the store. I don't know if it's wet. But he didn't suspect that shopkeeper Zhengde would use the waste medicinal materials to do something bad to them. He went into the warehouse to search for them, took out 2 large bags of cleaned medicinal materials, and also put a ladder on the wall and climbed up. After going up, hand the medicinal materials to him. He said, it's a mess and everything is mixed together. The shopkeeper Zhengde didn't dislike it at all, and waved his hand, Dr. Zhou Xiao doesn't mind. Then hand over the 3 packets of medicinal herbs to Daji, who was stunned, and asked him to take it home. See you tomorrow. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1459. Teacher Mo was surprised to see so many stones as soon as he went online. Stone is not included in Manbao's collection, so she can only put it in the teaching room with teaching materials. Taking advantage of Bai Shan to report the situation to Mr. Mo, Manbao entered the system and had a face-to-face exchange with Teacher Mo. This is all new today, Mr. Mo, many of us here are poisoned and need a lot of antidote. She said, also, these things have to be forged and identical, and I will give them to people within 7 days. Teacher Mo's eyes were directly fixed on the big stone shell. He said, it's not difficult, I will help you do it well, but Manbao, there should be more than a few meteorites falling. Look here. The fault of the meteorite was obviously broken after passing through the atmosphere, and there must be other meteorites left behind. Manbao said with a headache, Jiaokang is too far away in the western regions, let alone me. It is difficult for the imperial court to check the situation there, but I will let people pay attention, and if I find it, I will find a way to recover it. Seeing the tragic state of the 3 patients today, she knew that for her, it was more than just exchanging some study materials with Teacher Mo. She has read Master Tang's case about that village. From the 9th year of Dajhan to the 16th year of Dajhan, their village sacrificed 3 living people just to stop the punishment, not to mention the death of illness and death due to it. Born with handicapped children. Because of a stone, these unethical and moral things happened in a place they didn't know. She didn't know it, and she didn't know. Once she knew, she couldn't feel at ease as if she didn't know anything. Manbao took a deep breath and asked, Mr. Mo, Can I really make the antidote by myself? After thinking about it, Mr. Mo introduced it carefully. This is a synthetic medicine, which is different from traditional Chinese medicine. It is mainly chemical extraction. In fact, you have all the raw materials in your world, but if you want to extract them completely, the world you are in is based on technology cannot be extracted. He volleyed to the stones floating among them and said, some of the things need to get reaction drugs after they react. You don't have this technology there. There are no machines or even the most basic reaction agents, and it is a fool's errand to extract medicines. Man Bao sighed and asked Mr. Mo to help synthesize it. Teacher Mo collected the floating stones one by one and asked, are there many people who have been poisoned? Man Bao said, a lot, but I have to ask for the exact number. Teacher Mo nodded. The cost of this medicine is not very high at present, at least it is not worth mentioning compared with the value of these stones. He said, tomorrow, both the medicine and the imitation can be given to you. So fast? Man Bao lowered his eyes and thought for a moment. When he raised his head again, he fixedly looked at Teacher Mo in the opposite video and asked, Mr. Mo, what are these stones for? Teacher Mo opened his mouth to speak, but suddenly the figure was blurred, making noises, and after a few flashes, it returned to normal. He frowned and said, it's nothing, don't ask, you haven't had a good class in this period of time. I uploaded several courses in the teaching room. If you have time, go to it and make up for the homework you missed before. Through Coco, she already knew that this only happened when expressing what was forbidden by the encyclopedia. So what Teacher Mo wanted to say just now is forbidden by the encyclopedia. Man Bao did not continue to question, nodded, and stepped back. In the study, Zhou Lixiu and the others were doing their homework. When he saw the little ant come in, he looked for it on the table, and then gave her a letter and said, little ant, the fourth uncle sent a letter saying that he is about to when we arrived in the capital. This time he brought a lot of tea and people, and asked Uncle Fifth to find a house to rent in the outer city, and they could live there when they arrived. Man Bao asked while opening the letter, why do you want to rent such a big yard? The fourth uncle said that tea is valuable, and it is better to have a single family, otherwise it will be difficult to put money. Anyway, the house in the outer city is not very expensive. It is good. Man Bao nodded and handed the letter to him, send it to fifth brother later. Zhou Lixiu was happy, and he also wanted to go to the restaurant to play. Man Bao sat down in her place, took out a piece of white paper, and began to polish the ink. She thought about it, and decided to list the next prescription. The people in that village are different from the prince. They have been in contact with stones for too long. Even if they detoxify, their bodies will not be able to return to the past, and there are still many areas that need to be recuperated. Man Bao wrote a formula, frowned and thought for a while, then crossed it out, carefully recalled their pulse case, and wrote down another formula. Bai Shan was squatting on the bookshelf to find books about Zhao Kang. He looked through the descriptions of travel notes and geography, and found that there were very few records in the books at home. After thinking about it, he turned around and saluted Mr. Zhuang, Sir, I'm going to a bookstore. After thinking about it, Mr. Zhuang said, I'll go. You and Erlang go to the library of Quazijian. He said, the Quazijian has more books than the bookstores outside, and there are also some official notes. Bai Erlang looked blank, what are you doing at the bookstore and library? Bai Shan has already pulled him, let's go quickly, I'll tell you on the way. Bai Erlang exclaimed, have a rest today. But Bai Shan had already dragged him away. He could only go back to the library to find things when he was resting in school. There were only a few people in the entire library, which was very boring. Man Bao went to the palace the next day to see the prince and the princess. There was no abnormality between the two of them. The prince was no different from usual. After looking at it again and again, Man Bao couldn't help but ask, "Your Highness, are all 4 cases closed?" The prince put on his clothes and said with a blank face, "Your Majesty has summoned Prince Gong and Prince Guangping to the capital. Xiangzhou is not close to the capital, so Hoji was temporarily detained in the heavenly prison, and the entire Ho family was raided. Dali Temple and the Ministry of Punishment are probably raiding the Ho's house." The Ho family was indeed raiding their home. Mrs. Ho didn't even know that her husband was rebellious. Before he tossed and turned at night, she thought it was a business matter, and she advised him to discuss with His Majesty if he had something to do, so that he should not be alone in his heart. Result: she hugged her 2 granddaughters and sat shivering in the chair, unable to speak for a while. Yin Li wouldn't be able to do something like raiding a house, which both offends people and lacks technical self-restraint, so he let Master Tang represent him at Jingzhou Mansion. For this reason, he also dug Master Tang in front of Feng Shangshu, saying that Jingzhou Mansion is much better than the Ministry of Punishment. "Wouldn't you consider coming to work under me?" Feng Shangshu was so angry that his beard flew off. Master Tang said that he obeyed the arrangement of his superiors. See you at 4 p.m. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1460. Man Bao left the palace and deliberately asked Daji to divert to the Ho residence. Because the case was solved, the guards who had been supporting her in and out of the palace withdrew. They had only 1 car and soon arrived at the front of the Ho residence. Many people followed to join in the fun outside the Ho's mansion. Of course, most of the people in the vicinity sent servants to watch. There was a loud cry inside, and people were constantly moving boxes outside, and some precious screens, tables, and chairs were also moved out and loaded onto the car and pulled away. Man Bao got out of the car and watched for a while, then looked around, found a soldier who looked familiar and said, "Is Mr. Tang here? I'll ask Mr. Tang to say something." Man Bao felt that the other party was familiar, but the other party knew Man Bao directly, so the other party only glanced at her before turning around and entering the Ho residence. After a while, Master Tang came out, and he asked Man Bao with a smile, "It's a mess here, why are you here?" Man Bao looked away from the gate of Ho Mansion and said, "I want to ask Brother Tang how many people have been poisoned, so that I can prepare an antidote for them." Master Tang was taken aback and asked, "Are you going to prepare an antidote for each of them?" Man Bao wondered, "Don't you need an antidote for everyone?" Master Tang paused and said, "There are still 86 people in that village. You must know that it is not close to the capital from Jiaokang. Don't look at them taking out the stones and witnesses lightly, but if Yin Li hadn't done it, neither he nor the prince would be able to find out. Or, even if it is found, it is impossible to bring the evidence and witnesses to the capital, and the speed is still so fast." Yin Li was the emperor's confidant. After he took over the case from the prince, he set his sights on Haoji. When investigating Haoji, Master Tang became suspicious of the emperor's impeachment 2 years ago. He suspected that the gem was from Jiaokang. After hearing it, Yin Li went directly to the military slaves to check, and immediately found the person of the former Prince Jiaokang. From him, he learned the village where the craftsman was located, and also knew the thoughts of the Prince Jiaokang. Only 3 days before and after. But why did they report it after 42 days of receiving the case? Because they are going to Jiaokang to pick up and find evidence. Yin Li used the army horse and the people from the post station, 2 people and 4 horses, and asked Jiaokang to send them off with an urgent official letter of 800 miles. The capital quickly sent horses to secret letters, and they changed people as soon as they arrived at the station. It took only 8 days to get to Jiaokang, and the people and horses almost died on the road, but it took 31 days to return to the capital from Jiaokang with witnesses. Time. What Master Tang didn't tell Man Bao and the others was that there were actually 5 witnesses this time, but 2 of them couldn't survive on the road. This is a rapid march. If it is a business trip, it may take 2 months to travel from Beijing to Jiaokang. If someone else came to investigate this case, it would be impossible to find out. Let alone the courtiers, if he hadn't trusted Zhou Man enough, he would have doubted it. However, Master Tang looked at Man Bao, who seemed to have calmed down a lot, and swallowed the rest. Without telling her how difficult it was to walk from the capital to Jiaokang, he smiled and said, "If you can do it, then make a few copies, make 90 copies, and then I'll have someone send it." Man Bao nodded, turned to leave, glanced at the whole mansion, and asked, "Why didn't the first prince of Jiaokang tell the villagers when he found out that the stone was poisonous?" According to the information of Master Tang, the village used livestock to sacrifice to the sky at the beginning. It was in the 13th year of Dajhan that the situation deteriorated sharply, and they began to sacrifice with human beings. After being silent for a while, Master Tang said, "It's also a good thing for them to destroy the Jiaokang kingdom. Otherwise, the entire village might not survive." Man Bao pursed the corners of his mouth tightly, and said after a while, "Is human life not worth cherishing?" Looking at Man Bao, Master Tang raised his eyebrows slightly. After thinking about it, he said, "They are kings, and they think about profit and loss. You are a doctor, and they have no interest in entanglement with you. Naturally, they think differently from you." Master Tang reached out and patted her on the shoulder, and said like an adult, "When you grow up, you should know that some things cannot be controlled by me, and what we can do is to influence what we can influence." Seeing her bewildered face, Master Tang leaned closer and said in a low voice, "For example, the prince's health and heir." He lowered his voice and said, "The East Palace is the foundation of the country. He is stable, that is, the country's foundation is stable, and the society is stable." Man Bao raised her eyes to meet Master Tang's gaze, and after a while, she whispered, "He is very stable." Master Tang cocked the corner of his mouth and got the answer he wanted. Just as he was enjoying himself, he heard a gloomy wind blowing behind him. "Tang's Hai, what are you doing?" Hearing this voice, Master Tang immediately jumped back, turned his head to look, and saw Madame Tang staring at him with bulging eyes. Master Tang immediately asked, "Why is Madame here?" I will talk to Zhou Man." Man Bao said calmly, "Sister-in-law, my senior threatened me that I couldn't tell you about him and Yang Shuexian going to the Zhuangyuan building to have a drink and be called an actor." Madame Tang widened her eyes, "Have you asked the actor to serve you?" Master Tang choked in his chest, turned around and glared at Zhou Man before trying to appease Madame Tang. "Madam, that actor is not our name, it's that kid Han Zhengzhong. It's not like you didn't know, I went drinking with Changbo. What kind of actor are you called? Are we rewarding the actor, or the actor rewarding Changbo? Ba ba ba, don't spread this word." Madame Tang clenched her fists, but in the public, especially Feng Shangshu and the others also came out of the whole residence, so she lucked out and didn't do anything, just gave him a sideways glance, and then turned around and took it from the girl a burden slammed into his arms and said, "These are some clothes I prepared for my aunt and them. You can send them in, and I'll settle the account with you when you go back in the evening." After she finished speaking, she turned to look at Man Bao, smiled, and waved, "Come on Man Bao, sister-in-law will take you home." Man Bao hurriedly ran over. After getting into the car, he opened the curtains and said to Darren Tang, "Shuexian Tang, the prince is safe, and the courtiers must be safe, otherwise, like Zhou Yahao, who comes every 3 days, I think no matter how stable the country is, so is the society. Unstable. Master Tang. This little girl used to be so soft and cute, when did she become so cruel and terrifying?" Mrs. Tang asked her driver to go, and Daji honestly drove the car and followed behind. When the carriage was far away, Madame Tang asked Man Bao, "What are you talking about?" Man Bao shook his head and said, "I'm talking about Jiaokang. Does my sister-in-law know about the poisonous stone falling from the sky?" "I know," Mrs. Tang said after a pause, I heard what's high he said last night, and everyone in Beijing should know it now. Man Bao said, we're talking about delivering the antidote. It's too far from the capital to Jiaokang, so I'm afraid the road won't be stable. See you at 8 p.m.